so it's existence first, and then it realizes, and it says I am, and then it's conscious.
Because it splits.
And before that, existence
into
wasn't conscious.
Because you have to split yourself into two to look back at yourself. To say I am, that's already two things. You're like I, and then am. I exist. You're like, it's the feedback loop of looking at yourself, not even with a mirror.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so you've already split yourself into two by self-reflecting. Because by the time
that's got to be a confusing. I feel like it's more like I.
Yeah.
Keep on talking, honeys.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mind Under Matter podcast. Do you ever think about how low or high your voice is? Do you still like?
Always.
When I was a kid, I would.
Yeah. Always.
What do you mean? Always?
Like I'll say something and I'll be like, "Is my
quantify always for me? Like what? Like a percentage of the day? Like, does it come up like once a day? I'm sorry, I interrupted
yeah, once
you.
a day
I'm
at
fascinated.
least. Once a day at least, I'll be like, I'll think about where my voice is in the register of voices and be like, it's not as cool as some people with lower voices or even some people with higher voices. It's just not. Like, I'll just judge myself from every angle. It's a real mess. I'm trying to...
Well, I have a naturally deep voice, and I don't know if it was part of, like, conditioning as a kid. If, like, as a guy, you know, when you're hitting puberty and stuff, you just, like, whoa, you know, because you do... There was always the kid at the playground, or that, not one. There was a few kids that were, like, artificially lowering their, you know... to sound manlier, and I think I would do that sometimes. So who knows if it's I don't know if it's something you can condition, and then you probably can, and maybe I did, but I was doing a podcast today, and I was like, I felt a little like off or something. I just didn't feel terribly confident in how I was, how the interview is going. It was good. It was fine, but it's been better.
In that the questions something, or like in your flow or what?
Yeah, it was like my confidence level wasn't there. Like sometimes, I mean, when I do Here We Are, I get intimidated. So you'll hear it sometimes on this show too, when I'm kind of grasping at trying to remember a thing, like I think this sort of is the thing that works. So, you know, confidence goes up and down a little bit.
Even then, you're afraid of what scientists will hear. I don't think you're afraid of what I'll hear if you give me some bad science, because I'll give you bad science too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, well I'll give you bad science. A bad science off to the death.
Which isn't the end of consciousness, by the way.
We're talking about consciousness today. But I do close the loop. I have in the past, when I do consciously, like if I walk on stage and intentionally lower my voice a little bit, I feel like in like a rougher room, if it's in a rougher room, I feel like it's easier to command, because there's like the dudes that are like the biggest, drunkest, like bullyish dicks, like thinking about heckling. Heckling isn't a thing that happens all that regularly, at least in the before times. Now there's like every video's like, a comedian owns heckler, and it's probably training the audience to. But I feel like it works, like a lower voice works on like the alpha douchebag a little bit.
And so everyone, I think, on an evolutionary level, it's one of those unfortunate things. I think like we're not everyone, but I think the higher the voice, the more likely you are at a reptile brain level to be like, this is not the alpha. I won't listen to them. But if they're like, hey guys, let's go walk into that volcano, it's like, yeah, let's listen to the alpha dog.
Let's walk into that volcano.
Yeah.
And then I sometimes, yeah, I'll be talking to an attractive lady and I'll be like, that's a bit much. That's not how low my voice is. Like, I'm really, really lowering it. It's almost like, am I trying to play it cool, like a little too hard right now? And then I get in my head, I'm like, that's not, you can't pretend to play it like you're either playing it cool or you're not, for the most part.
Yeah.
But I notice it from time to time. But I do like that. But we're all, when it comes to the announcer voice, you open a show or whatever. Ladies and gentlemen, people are like, nothing strange about that. We're all just used to that. Nothing strange about someone being, ladies and gentlemen. Like, we all just accept that that's the way life is.
It really is. And it's not the strip club DJ voice. It's the like announcer voice. It's a different one. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Schmeichel. Nassim Pedrad. Horatio Sands. None of those people are on SNL anymore. It's all like 13-year-old TikTokers.
You could have fooled me. That was all the hits, the old school people.
I only know Andrew Dismukes because he was a SNL, or not an SNL guy, or he is an SNL guy, but he was an Austin guy who's on SNL now. So that's why I know that one. Oh, and Bowen Yang. That's another person.
Wait. Isn't that Austin, the dude that does the awesome Trump?
No. Or actually, Shane Gillis does a good Trump, but he's the guy that didn't get on SNL because he did an Asian voice on a podcast. AJ Shrimp. Is that who you're talking about? No. I don't know that one, but maybe they do have a good Trump. There's a lot of good Trumps.
Yeah, but this dude got on SNL.
Oh, James Austin Johnson. That's who you're thinking of. Yeah. He does a good Trump too. Yeah, you're right.
It's incredible. It's like, because it's so abstract and bizarre, and he has one about Trump talking about Scooby-Doo. That is just some of the finest content I've seen. Now he's on SNL.
Oh yeah.
He just like, I mean, that is pretty, to do a Trump impression in a ocean of Trump impressions and stick out and have people be like, I don't normally like Trump impressions, but hot diggity dog.
It's like Brian Regan, like the way, not that Brian Regan does Trump impressions, but when he finds meat still left on the bone of topics that you thought comics had already finished, like back in 1992. And then he's got like a good bit on it in 2021. You're like, what? There's still stuff left on that?
I know. I do love that. Yeah. I like when that happens, because it's always like, whenever that cliche subject matter comes up, I'm always like, here we go. And so when someone surprises you, that is quite nice. That's almost more challenging than just being like Eugene Merman kind of weird or so. But I'm a big Eugene Merman fan, by the way. But it is.
Now that's like a name I haven't heard in a long time.
I think he's still doing.
I'm sure. I just did
quite a bit of stuff.
It wasn't on my radar. He probably has 100 podcasts and shows or whatever. But
he was from Boston, and I guess, I guess when he worked in Boston, I guess he like worked at this ice cream. I don't know if this is actually true.
Just make the story anyway, though.
The story, as I understood it, this might have been a comedy club owner just jokingly taking credit for it, and I thought they were being serious, so I don't know. But I know that he actually did this thing. So he worked at some ice cream shop, and then sometimes he just didn't feel like working and he wanted to take a break or whatever. And so he would put a shovel like through the handles in the door and then hang a sign on the shovel that said closed due to shovel.
That's brilliant. I would be fine even if I was really craving ice cream. I would be fine for that bit.
but Emo Phillips, Eugene Merman, something like exceptionally abstract is that's one kind of comedy where it's like, how in the world did you think of that? That's genius. And then the kind where it's like every single person has done a stupid joke about this exact topic, but somehow you found meat left on the bone is also as like genius and impressive.
And I loved Eugene Merman's comedy special that's titled, mainly I just love the title, but it's called An Evening of Comedy in a Fake Underground Laboratory.
Yeah, he's great. He was fun to watch when I was coming up. It was especially nice in Boston because Boston had a lot of like hard edge, like towny, hackier-ish guys too that were more of the Elks Lodgy stuff. And so it was nice to see that I liked the alt scene way more, but they had both, so it was nice. So we're talking about consciousness today because once a month we have a public episode that is actually suggested by a topic or topics by Patreon supporters and subscribers. And it's fun to do because you can't just support us on Patreon and then just throw out a turd of an idea and then we'll make a whole episode about us. Instead, our listeners are super cool, thoughtful people with good ideas. And so when there are good ideas and they share them on Patreon, we make a whole episode about them. That happens to be the case this month. As we're talking about consciousness, this recommendation came from Stuart Brazewell.
Nice. Someone who brays is good. It's good to braise well.
Yeah. I always feel like you throw a well on the end of a name, and I always I'm like, oh, that's nice.
Lucille Wittgenstein's well.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Oh. Sounds like she's very good at Wittgensteining.
Wittgensteinwell.
And braise is kind of like a brazen, like a grittier kind of, and then the well has like a lightness to it. I'm into it. I'm into the name Brazewell. He has a SoundCloud.com.
Get out of here.
/Stuart Brazewell. Should I throw it to you in the comments? Why not? Here we go. Bing bang boom. Send it. And so Stuart said, I'd love to hear you jump off the deep end into a discussion on whether consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe. Physics, philosophy, and a dash of ancient mysticism.
Just a dash.
You should be able to nail that one down in an hour or so. Yeah, it's
so in the right over here we've got me defending universal consciousness, and then over on the left we've got Shane defending consciousness being this I don't even know what you would call it. You'd call it like a random chance thing that the brain is doing on Earth during this time, and like it's our illusion thing, which is
you summed it up. I'm done. Under an hour. I don't even need to talk. Nailed it. That's exactly where I come from, and I'm correct in thinking that. So
you're saying Annika Harris is dumb? You're saying she's a dumb idiot? Wow, I can't believe you said that. Hope Sam doesn't hear it too.
I've got to check out her book, by the way. I've been, she's been on my radar. Our editor, Matt McCool, was like, you should check out her book. She has some cool things to say. But I also wanted to note that, not to brag, I don't know if you noticed, but I beat you to the Rocky theme song.
Oh, damn.
So I knew that was your...
Damn, you did.
I know.
I got to find a new song.
That was your crotch. That's usually how you get me.
Yeah, it is.
I know I've been got when you start doing the Rocky theme song, so I beat you to the punch, as they say.
I'll come back with it after enough time has passed and you've forgotten. Because really, it's the last person to have Rockied, not just the first.
Oh no, this could be a nightmare of an episode if that's the rules, that we're just a game of chicken with the Rocky song. We probably this is so we have this thing on the show. We're early on, it's kind of fun from a marketing perspective, and it just sounds better to be like, oh, this guy Shane does a podcast where he interviews scientists, and this other guy Ramin hosts a podcast where he interviews artists and mystics and then they debate over. I don't think we say debate in the description, but it kind of implies that we have these real varying takes on things, which really isn't the case. But this might be one where we have a little more of a dichotomy than usual, which I think is really interesting. But I sincerely, rather than just like a debate style, like who won, because I don't have I have no horse in the consciousness race.
Also,
debate.
I think it's unwinnable. I think it's fundamentally, it is true and it's also not true. And it's this paradox that we just can't fit in our little 3-dimensional pile of mush in our skull.
There's also a thing with consciousness where I love talking about it. We'll have a great discussion, but then there's things like this where I love contemplation, I love philosophy, and I love wonder. And then sometimes at the end of the day, there's like a kind of I'm a bit of a functionalist when it comes to consciousness. It's like, well, I want consciousness to be a thing that works for me, or I can do something with. Like, I want a definition as like, okay, understanding these aspects of consciousness will help my life in some way. And so that's my own bias, because that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm articulating the truth of what consciousness is. It means that I just kind of, there's a level of complexity where and I just finally go, yeah, well, whatever. What's going to benefit me the most?
Yeah, if you can't have it as a tool, then you just toss it aside, which is one of the limits of science in a way, or not science itself, but just the way we use science. As if it can't make a tool that predicts stuff, then we don't care about it as much.
It is, and I get frustrated for other people for having the same kind of functionalist, like, oh, well, why would I care about a thing like that? I can't use it for it unless it's like about how to make more money or something like that. What's it matter? And I'm like, but it's so interesting. Why? How could you not care?
And maybe it'll be useful later, and maybe not in your lifetime, but perhaps you uncover something that is very useful in like 200 years. But right now we just don't have the tools to understand it.
I think you and I today in this episode are going to uncover
all
something that
not
future
something,
people
all
will,
of it.
all of it, that the future people will greatly benefit from. Definitely not in our lifetime, or not definitely, but like unlikely in our lifetime you're going to benefit from this conversation. But future people, for sure. Oh, they are just going to be
salivating,
swimming in the delights and salivating
over the soft rock, taking it easy, sipping up that honey. I gotta write down all our things again. I forgot them.
But so there's obviously no rules to this, but I guess I would say that
no punching below the belt. How about that?
Well, I did just want to say that, like, I'm fine with debating and see, but I also from the like fundamental consciousness for say, I'm just genuinely interested. I just don't know a lot from that perspective, so I would like to hear things that you know about that you may not even necessarily believe, but like other takes that are out there, just because I'm not as familiar with them as well. If you're up for that.
Oh, for sure.
So bear that in mind.
Yeah, to the best of my ability. I really wanted to reread The Law of One before I stepped into the ring here, but I wanted to play Zelda instead because I didn't feel like reading. And then I thought like, oh, it'll be more fun to go in. I justify every decision with it'll be more fun if I go in unprepared, etc.
What's this book?
It's a channeled text from the entity that was in ancient Egypt, you know, the god Ra, the sun god. And in this channeled text, they're asking it, are you the same being that was in ancient Egypt? It was like, that is true. We are a social memory complex. We used to take physical form in your density. We are still always everywhere, but we are no longer in physical form in your density. We are here to deliver the one truth that all existence originates from a single thought, and the thought is I am. So there's just the dimensionless plenum of whatever you want to call it, nothingness, everythingness. There's no distinction between nothing and everything. If there's no light, there can't be dark. There's no dark, there can't be light. But then the next thing that comes after the dimensionless plenum is realizing that there is a you. So the feedback loop of I am, okay, and then that I am splits into individuated units of consciousness on and on and on and on forever. So it's kind of unpacking that. But the law of one is that all that is multiple must stem from one. You can't have multiple stuff as a fundamental thing of the universe. It all comes from one. Doesn't have a beard, doesn't say that you can't be gay or whatever, none of that stuff. It's not the one god of like, and then listen to the bearded guy. It's not that. I'm talking like one, like whole thing. Ugh.
That would be a funny way that would be a funny takeaway of like, say you had afterlife or, you know, a near death experience or something like that. You're in a coma, you come out, you're like, I saw the one and like, well, all right, Ramin, tell us, what was the one like? And you're like, well, doesn't have a beard and doesn't say anything about homosexuality. That's all I have for you.
A beardless. What if it's when people say, I don't believe in a bearded man in the sky. What if it's, I believe in a beardless man in the sky. He looks really weird. He's like shaved beard god. Like it looks baby faced a little.
Yeah, I believe in a little flavor saver god in the sky.
Soul patch Yahweh. Soul patch Allah, which says to know Allah is to know oneself. Oneself. And that is what I like to communicate through Cosm and Antheon.
I mean I get the idea that on a certain level, like we are all part of the universe. Everything that came out of the Big Bang is everything that there is, and everything that's happened is all one thing. But there's in the same way that I get that there's air between me and this camera or the screen that I'm looking at, but it's still substance and it's all part of the same thing. But I don't get what that has to do with consciousness as much. Just because the origin of the universe was a thought that then sprung forth into the universe. Is that what that's meant? I'm trying to understand.
Does it mean that it's, wait, say that one more time?
So I get that
I think it's saying that
that the universe is all one thing, but what is the I am that was like that? So that was a thought that like created the universe and whatever other like multiverse.
No, it has nothing to do with creating it, because that would imply that there was a before. It's rather just you in creating the distinction between that which is me and that which is outside me. That's when consciousness realizes that it's consciousness, and it's always been that. So yeah, that's what any awareness is. I mean, we could call consciousness awareness. And I consider, so at the fundamental level, you have nothingness or everythingness. Above that, you have the division into I am and I am everything, or I am this. And then there's that which is not me and outside of me. And then above a level of awareness, you have the choice maker. And that doesn't mean infinite choice. It could be a very limited decision space. Like you could be a one-dimensional entity and your choice is go forward or go backwards. You could be like an even smaller, like amoeba. It's like, should I veer this way? And maybe you're not even making the conscious decision. It's more just like the determinism of your little neural feedback, or they don't even have neurons. But what was the point of that again? Let's see. Yeah, basically the feedback loop of that which is outside of you and that which is you.
So I guess in defining, like I don't exactly know how consciousness is defined, because it seems like it's defined by a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. And so it is a little tough to it's not like looking at a painting and interpreting the painting, because it's so much more than that of what we are. Like for example, because I think that if I try to think about when I hear the word consciousness, what I think about, or when I use the word, what I'm referring to has a lot more to do with individual perception. Like I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say awareness plays as much of a factor for me, because say you dream. Say I have a dream tonight and you're in it and Mickey Mouse is
Hell
there.
Yeah.
And
all-star lineup.
We're all, yeah. we're like playing baseball or something like that. Like I'm not. So I am not aware that I am creating you and Mickey and the baseball field and everything else within that dream, but that is consciousness to me. And so to me it's something that you experience,
The felt presence of immediate experience.
Yeah. And it doesn't, and consciousness to me doesn't necessarily imply like accuracy. Like there's an objective reality outside consciousness, and then there's consciousness, which is often an interpretation of the outside world or simulations going forward or dream state or whatever. But it's also that's consciousness, and it's true in that you're having that like if you're driving and you look and you don't see a car in your blind spot. There is a car in your blind spot, but you look and the cones in your eyes have this little gap in there. And so your consciousness fills that gap in and like paints over the car. So you just see the road there and you don't see the car.
Yeah.
That is a true conscious perception to me. And then the car honks and then boom, you see the car and consciousness has changed like that. But that's also of your conscious perception. It's just a now more accurate conscious perception of the outside world and environment that you are in. I guess that's.
And is there an end to that?
Sort of how I think.
Is there an end to like when we actually get to the bottom of it, where there's an objective reality? Because when we we dig into what all that is, like the car and what it's made of, the steel and like the molecules that's made of, you go deeper than that. You keep going down into the quantum realm where it's all up, down, left, right, strange, charm, like And there's no particles to be found in existence. It's all just varying amounts of energy. So the part where the energy is the most concentrated, we go, okay, well, that's basically a particle for all intents and purposes. We'll just say we'll call that particle. But there is no stubborn billiard ball in matter. It's all a vibration. It's energy slowed down to a vibration, which then we call our density. So the law of one talks about there's other beings at different densities that are aware of you, but they don't need to do anything with you because they don't care about this density. They're in a different one, and there's infinite densities above it and below it, and so on. They're not coming from outer space. They're always here, and I always thought it was, or not always thought, but it came to me at some point that it's weird to think that the rock is not conscious, I am conscious, and then the galaxy is not conscious. So when you get down to this resolution, there's consciousness, and then it's kind of arrogant to think that that galaxy does not have any awareness of itself. It probably wants to be a galaxy. It's like sustaining that form in its way. I know that's a stretch, but that's what I'm defending, though. I got to defend the stretches here.
Well, you don't have to, and I don't think that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess I do. That's the one that confuses me, because then it's just, to me, it feels. So, I guess where I always have caution is anything that feels like magical thinking to me, or anything that feels intuitive to me, or it's just like, these philosophers had this intuitive outlook of, like, egocentrism is like this. Like, it took a long time to find out that we weren't the center of the universe. I'm always a little bit skeptical. And I guess when it comes to, like, is the universe itself conscious, and like the vacuum and the in rocks, for example, it's like, well, to me, what's the difference between this microphone and the universe? I would never think of this microphone as consciousness, and this microphone has like little living organisms that I've like breathed into it, growing in it for a short amount of time, and those organisms, they might be conscious, depending on what.
Well, if we
definition.
were to ask Tom Campbell, what he would say is, well, it all boils down to decision space. So if you're a rock or if you're a microphone, you don't have a lot of decision space. You can't really do anything with that consciousness. But if you're a human being, or maybe you're a lizard, or even an elf in World of Warcraft, you have some decision space. You get to make choices whether you evolve or devolve your consciousness.
It seems like free will has some sort of a role in, as we try to think out consciousness.
Oh yeah,
it's
decision space.
It's like,
that's really what it boils down to. I love learning different words to describe things that are tired. Like free will and determinism are tired terms, and it becomes like this sort of abortion debate, like not saying that there's no, like, I don't have an opinion on that, but when I see those arguments, it's clear that people are talking over each other, where one side is like, it's like you're stopping women's freedom, then the other side is saying you're killing babies, and they're not hearing each other at all. They're just completely talking over each other.
Yeah, I mean, that would be wonderful for, and I think language does naturally evolve and keep on, finding new and then distance itself from old ways of saying things. I think that is probably pretty important in the consciousness. Like if you think about spirituality, for example, like if someone asks me, am I spiritual? It's like, well, spiritual?
Yeah, spirit, like, with
do
a
I
ritual.
believe in ghosts?
And you ritualize it. Do you do a little ritual
Yeah.
where you put the little sage there and you light the Palo Alto and you put a little pentagram on the floor and you have your crystals and you do pull tarot cards? Do you do Reiki? Do you
Yeah.
get cups sucked on your back? Do you
Yeah. Because it's like, well, fuck no. I'm not spiritual. I'm not turning spirits into a ritual.
Yeah.
But that's not what most people's definition of that word would be. And there's definitions of spiritual that would probably fall within something that I experience. I mean, certainly I'm like often in awe of, even on my worst day, just how fucking interesting all of this is,
Yeah. And or keep going.
And that meets a lot of people's definition of spiritual.
Yeah, and it's weird that we all have to extrapolate on or unpack that. No one likes to be like, I'm spiritual, and then just leave it at that. They have to be, well, don't put me in that box, but don't put me in the other box either. I'm not Penn Jillette over here, although amazing magician and stuff, but the staunch atheist is also like, it's too closed off. And I loved how McKenna would be like, well, I was an atheist for about 12 years. And then I eventually learned that's just another place on the path where you start from dogmatic religion, you become an atheist, and then you see what it's really about, which is everything. And all of it can be. And then you realize you know nothing. And that's how I died. I died knowing nothing at all. I didn't say the mushroom was good. I didn't say God was good. I didn't even say that drinking a glass of water was good, because who knows?
Is that how he laughed? I'm not sure I ever heard of that. Or did he just make that
No,
up?
sometimes he gets to that one, yeah. Laughs are a big part of when catching someone's essence, I feel like, especially when they are for real doing their laugh.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's also, I mean, there's social considerations to be made when, even if you're alone writing a book or thoughts or something like that, that you maybe are even thinking about sharing with someone eventually. It's if someone asks me, am I spiritual? I first go, well, where are they at? Where do I think they're at? Because I'm like, well, how do I present this? Like, I don't want to come off as a dick, but I don't want to like lie. I want to be honest. I want to meet them where they are a little bit. I want to know like what is their like philosophical operating system that they're using, that I can like. What do I need to say to relate to them? What do they already know?
Yeah, and we all have our own little operating system. It's weird because we all have we all use iOS or Windows or whatever, or Linux, but individually there's no consistent OS amongst everyone. We all have our own very specific one, with our own biases and conclusions that we've arrived at and sometimes abandoned. So we'll come to a conclusion about the universe and then abandon it and then come up with a new one and then abandon that later. And then it's like just where we're at right now.
Yeah. Going back to another thing that kind of confuses me when I hear about like universal consciousness is, and I hear a lot of like you're like, well, no one knows everything. You get down to a thing and there's quantum mechanics and like everything gets messy, and it's like, well, but I would say that I still believe that there is an objective a reality that exists, whether humans exist or not, whether a single brain or living organism in the entire universe exists, there's still an objective reality that exists, even if I don't understand how it works. It's like I don't need to master reality to know that like reality is a thing.
Yeah. So does it know itself? Does reality know its reality?
Does it know itself?
Like at the top
level.
Because it could stand.
In my perception, I don't think that it does. You think so?
Of course. Yeah, because it could stand outside of, like, because we envisioned the Big Bang and the Big Crunch and all that, and just imagine, like, okay, there's this, and then it spirals out, and it's mostly vacuum, and it's got this kind of gravity and temperature and pressure kind of thing going on. But there could be an awareness just outside of that, so many densities outside of that, that's just like, this universe is doing nicely. This one is also doing nicely. What would it be like if I made the, the gravity? What if I tweaked it? That doesn't work at all. Got to change that rule set a little bit. And it's not even thinking in terms of my mouth language, syntax, English sort of thing. Like it might be doing it all at once, because why would it need to take the long route to arrive at conclusions? It would just be like this. And
yeah,
it feels it. I don't know. There's something really funny about it, that you can't escape beingness. And I've said this many times before, but like not existing is not a thing that you can experience. You can only experience existence, or a very limited existence, but non-existence is not an experience that's on the table. Only gaps in time. You could be in a coma and be like, I didn't exist for 13 years, but you can't be like, oh, I was nothing for 1 trillion years and it was black. And because you've already defined it. You've got blackness. You've got void. Like there's no. Norm Macdonald would say that life and death never meet. So when you die, you're not experiencing the actual death part. You're either oblivion right after that, and which is a non-experience, or you're on to the next thing. Maybe you wake up from the dream. Maybe you realize you were playing a video game the whole time. You put the controller down, be like, oh, that was a little nuts. And it's a fun thing to also take this position, because let's say you're right and there's no universal consciousness, and then
right about what? I don't even know what I'm saying.
But let's say that the position I think you're taking, if there's no awareness after we leave this brain, where after the worms have eaten it and everything, you're not around to gloat. Whereas if there's universal consciousness and we wake up from this, it's like I get to gloat afterwards. Like, there's something afterwards, so it's a win-win.
But that's where that's where motivated reasoning comes
True.
in. True.
I'm not outside of my human rascalness of bias and reasoning. Like no matter how much I decorate it, I'm still just a human. Like after this conversation, I'm still like, I don't know. Is any of this true, or did I just kind of read some things and believe what I want to believe?
Yeah.
While referencing Annika Harris or Deepak Chopra.
I mean, I very certainly my motivated reasoning is like contrarian and like I'm susceptible to kind of a learned sort of helplessness that I then justify through like these existential, like nothing matters sort of thing. I can slip into nothing matters from like I can go from 0 to beyond 0 in 0.2 seconds.
Oh, me too. I start at 0.
I guess that's what you would say. I can go from 60 to 0.
This thing will stop on a dime.
In terms of an existential crisis, yeah. Stop on a dime. I can give up on a dime.
Or a penny. Yeah, but I guess a dime is thinner.
Yeah, maybe I'll reach out to Annika. I'd love to talk to her.
That would be awesome. I would love to hear that.
What was it? You said something when you were riffing. I think you said lip words or something.
Mouth noises. Anyway, small mouth noises.
Yeah. That must be a good album title. Well, it does feel a hair turtle all the way to, because when it comes to what happened before the Big Bang, or what is outside of this universe, like I don't like Sure. I believe that there certainly could be a multi-universal consciousness.
Yeah.
But when I hear the word universal, like this universe that we're in, that physicists have like a pretty nice little idea of, and the more that we basically the more that we've learned about the universe since kind of the origin of being able to record human thought into writing, it's that, you know, started at, we're at the center of everything, and
the good old days,
some big thing like us looking out over all of us, and the more we've learned, the more we've had to come to grips with like, oh, actually, you thought you were the star of the show? Nope. We keep on getting pushed back into the, now you're a speck, you know, basically a fantastic fucking speck to be, if you ask me. Yeah. And also like this, there's no, to feel like a speck in the objective universe, in the physical universe, in terms of this is how many light years across the universe is or whatever, to feel like a speck in that on that scale means nothing anyway, because it's not consciousness, as I think about it, as the kind of perceptual multiverse that we are in and experiencing all the time, is there's no measurement of it. It's endless. It's so vast. It's infinite. And that's where you live, and you are at the center of that, and which isn't always great, but it's fucking interesting.
Yeah, especially to hold both. So on one side, you're holding the center of the universe, and then the other side of the spectrum, you're recognizing that I'm infinitely a small speck. Maybe I'm bigger than the atoms now that I look at the atoms, but who knows, if it loops, maybe I'm even smaller than the atoms, because it goes in a circle, and then on one level the atom is bigger than me. If like in Simpsons might have been parodying something else, but the first time I saw it was on a Simpsons episode where they zoom in to, or they zoom out, maybe, doesn't matter which way, but it starts in Homer's eye and keeps going to the atomic level, to the quark string theory, whatever level. Then it goes back to the supercluster level, back to the galaxy, back to the solar system. And then so it loops forever. And if you ask yourself, well, then if I hit Homer, wouldn't I kill the whole universe? No, because it's too big to cause any disturbance. So it could be this loop thing too, where the big thing eventually becomes the small thing, becomes the big thing, the small thing. And back to the law of one, I love this line that talks about the, let's see if I can pull it up in 2 seconds. Otherwise I won't waste any time with it. Oh yeah. So
well, if you're looking, I could, okay.
So they say, we are not the entity that is called Ra. They say, I am Ra. We communicate now. We too have our place. We are not those of love or of delight. We are those of the law of one. So they're not saying like we're all love light. We're just saying, no, we're of one. We're of the wholeness. Where we come from in our vibration, the polarities are harmonized, the complexities are simplified, and the paradoxes all have their solution. So so we see paradoxes and complexities as these overwhelming things that just can't be reconciled with. But from their perspective, it's an easy fix where we're standing. I don't know if that makes much sense.
No, I mean that makes perfect sense. I mean it's just that there's certainly so many limitations to what humans can know, no doubt about that. And so humans have solved many paradoxes along the way. You know, we just did Halloween episodes a few weeks ago, and you know, there's the paradox of if people don't like being scared, why would they intentionally scare themselves by watching a horror movie? That, you know, you could define that as a paradox. And then there's like,
I'm talking
good
real
ideas
paradoxes.
of explanations.
I'm talking like grandfather paradox. Like if you went back in time and killed your grandfather, like how could you have gone back in time to kill your grandfather? That kind of a complete logical fallacy, or an Escher painting.
I love that one.
The ones that are just like, no, it's the ones that make your brain break. Like those exist in a place, or maybe not in a place, but those are not as tall of orders that we conceive them to be. There's certain things we're like, that's too tall of an order. Even infinity, we're like, oh, I can't wrap my brain around never endingness. And not the small infinities, not like between 1 and 2. I mean, a nasty infinity, the one that's like for expanding outward in every direction.
I mean, some paradox just may not be possible too. The grandfather paradox just may not be possible. There's a fun one that's like there's a fun one that has something to do with. And by the way, that isn't to say that there's not some resolution for it too. I think that time travel is theoretical.
Just so people don't lose hope. Just if you really do want to kill your grandfather back in time. Just to make sure people don't lose hope. There is a way. We will figure it out.
Like not even before they gave birth to you, you just go back in time and kill your grandfather. Not for any paradox reasons.
I love that that's the name of the paradox, when really it could have been anything. Like just being back in time at all should cause some kind of continuity error.
You would think so. Yeah. There's so many things with time, and like the speed of light being a
constant.
Nothing being able to travel faster than the speed of light. There's an interesting paradox of what if you could flash, like make light that could travel faster than the speed of regular light. And so you have a light and a sensor on one end, and then you have a light and a sensor at the other end. So A and B. And A, you have the light go off, and it goes faster than the speed of light. So like beyond instantaneous to B, and as soon as that B gets hit with the sensor by light, it sends a light back to A, which then A has a sensor that recognizes that it got hit by the light. And if that's the case, then the sensor on A that recognizes the light would go off before you
send it, so it knows
before you send the light from A, which is like, maybe that's just not a thing that can happen. That also might be how some of the paradoxes end up being resolved. Yeah. The aliens that have a lot more information, AI, whatever else, those might be things that are solved.
Oh, for sure. Maybe who knows when or how, but I always think that things can be, people get turned off by supernatural because they interpret it as, oh, it's a thing that'll never be explained, and you just have to accept the rule, the dogma of the magic that I'm telling you. And I think that's stupid. I think it's more, these things will not be explained yet, but we'll have things to explain them with later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Still just as fascinating.
It's like, if there's an objective reality is independent on whether or not we can interpret it or be consciously aware of it.
Yeah, because how do we know we're not in a sandbox this whole time? Like, if we're in a virtual reality, no matter how complex and big it is, we could still just be in a little sandbox program the whole time and don't have access to the real reality, which we're running on. Because Mario doesn't know he's in the game, but he's still around. And not that, I mean, he's being controlled by us, and he's just pixels and numbers and the little the script running. Did you ever hear the single electron theory? Feynman and John Wheeler had it.
No.
So they, or I guess it was a hypothesis, not a theory. They said it's possible that there's just one electron moving very fast throughout the universe.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like such an overachieving electron. It's like, man, when the universe is done and that electron goes and like tells its friends what it was up to, like they'd never believe it.
Because a program is just running like it's running in a line. It's going. It's not like doing it all at once or multitasking. So the electron isn't multitasking either. It's one spark of light that's animating everything. And since our perception of time is so slow, I mean, even a hummingbird is super impressive to us. We're like, how does it move its head so fast? It has like no frame rate. It's like its head is here and then instantly there, and then it buzzed off. So at an electron level, it's not impossible that there could only be one. I'm not sure how you could prove it or disprove it though. Also, I'm not even sure what an electron
you just tag
is.
It. You just tag the electron. This thing keeps on popping up like fucking everywhere.
Well, we put a red Sharpie on it, and that looks kind of orange, so I don't know. Maybe it's from a different universe. Came from a different reality.
Well, I'd like to go back to this video game idea. So imagine, I don't play that many video games, but I played like the very first version of World of Warcraft, and my high school calculus teacher, Mr. Demel, had a computer lab, and he was a big video Demel. Yeah,
Demel. Okay.
He would let us stay after to play video games, and it was so you'd get to play with other people on a network. It was amazing, and you could play Doom or whatever else, and we play World of Warcraft, and there's these. So what's sort of interesting is you would, so there's these things that are kind of programmed with some amount of agency. Like you click a squad of whatever they're called,
Elves,
trolls
orcs.
or orcs. You click a squad of elves, and then you find this other spot on the map, and you click there, and then they kind of like find their own way there. They don't have that many decisions to make, in the fact that they can't break free of the program that is picking out their path, but they are kind of like behaviorally what sort of looks like some decisions being made about like going around these trees, going right or left here. But then there's something that's like, if they start getting attacked, you get alerted, and then you get brought in to attend to that. And I sometimes think about that with like consciousness and subconsciousness. Like much of our stuff is on autopilot, and then it's like when you're in a car accident.
Hopefully not.
Or when you're in a car and there's a close call, you were kind of on autopilot. You weren't paying that close of attention, and then a deer ran out in the road or whatever happened, and or you hit a patch of ice or something.
Shortcut to the present
time
moment.
Slows down and all of that, and it's almost like, so using shorthand, we often say like consciousness and subconscious when talking about these different levels of perception in the brain, but it is like the subconscious is like, you know what I got to do right now? I got to remember these lyrics. I got to plan out like the next couple weeks of work and come up with creative ideas and think about some girls and stuff like that. And then that's what consciousness is doing, and you're just kind of on autopilot. And then it's like, oh shit, we got to get the supervisor involved in this. And it's when the supervisor comes into that experience, it's like this, by comparison, this like very powerful, masterful, like time slows down. You're now operating on like the time scale of a reflex almost, and it turns it into slow motion, and it's consolidating it's storing that memory so you don't do that again, and it's doing all of these things at the same time. And I sometimes, like in a say we were in a simulation, I wonder if there'd be something like that going on, like, oh, this thing's in trouble. Like, there's a simulator looking over the universe, and most of it's just, the space between here and there that the orcs need to be sent to. And it's like, it's not that it's meaningless. It's just like the person playing just doesn't really have to attend to it. They certainly could sit and watch the orcs make the whole journey if they wanted to, but why? There's other things to build and other stuff going on. And then sometimes the shit goes down, and you got to be like, oh shit, well, I got to move this over here. There's certainly stuff like that happening between the consciousness and subconscious, but I do have fun thinking about that as like the idea of a god or a simulator or something like that.
Yeah, and I don't think the simulator is different from us. I think we are the simulator. I think we chose to descend into a more limited consciousness to learn lessons for. I mean, that's just one way of looking at it, because I don't even believe that either. I think there's no one way to eat the rhesus in that way.
I will say, and this isn't like a thing that I believe or like a part of my, again, like philosophical operating system, but at the same time, it's something that I have experienced. It's like if I'm just genuinely reporting the kind of qualia of the experience. I hope I'm using that word right, but just the feeling of it. I've had DMT and ayahuasca experiences where there's like this flat hologram. It's almost like patchwork. I think I've talked about this a little bit before, and it's got like different colors and stuff, but it's not numbers in the way that, in the human construct of like, this is what a 1 looks like and this is what a 2 looks like. But it just has a feeling of like, this is just pure code and just like pure math. And it's just kind of this flat thing. And it's, and what it feels like in that experience is that there's all these different sections of like holographic formulas that sometimes bump into regions of each other in a new like combination of ways that is novel. And when that happens, that creates a reaction, which is like a big bang. So like our universe came from one of these collisions, and like way more than just our universe. Like it looks like thousands when in that experience. And
that's just the room you were in. That's just the room you were in too.
Right. But then all of what happens is then I kind of see a model of the universe expand and then eventually collapse. But in that scale of time, it happens all, like really quickly. And and then all of the information, everything that happened in, say, this universe gets fed in back into that grid of information, which to me feels like just the realm of possibilities. It's just the realm of every single thing that's possible. And so then like when this like one mathematical possibility bumps into this other mathematical possibility in this novel way, it just creates this explosion, this other universe of possibility that then feeds into a thing that is all of possibility. Even it keeps on creating new possibilities, but it's all still just every possibility that there is, and it's constantly expanding.
Yeah.
And that's what it feels
and
like.
The fact that there's, you're calling it the realm of possibilities, like you imagine it as a place, and it's got all these albums there, and just because the album isn't being put on the record player doesn't mean there's not an album there with, cover art and credits, and it's filled up with all kinds of crazy stuff. But yeah, just we say, well, it's not outside the realm of possibility there. Therefore, there you go. I think if it exists as an idea in our little monkey brains, then it must exist somewhere. It must be bigger than that.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, I don't think. Are you saying that the ability to imagine something means that it has to exist?
Not exist physically, but just the fact that it is an idea says something about its not authenticity, its validity, its place in, because existence we think of as in the physical realm. I can see it, touch it, smell it, lick it, stick it up my ass, pull it out of my ass, stick it back up my ass, pull it out of my ass hundreds of times till I fall asleep. But if it exists as an idea,
just sheer exhaustion.
Yeah.
You fell asleep. It's just halfway.
Yeah, no orgasms or anything. Just that's how I like to not get off. I like to not. It's a new kind of kink. It's called not getting off by just putting ideas up your ass. But
what's this book, Work Yourself Sleepy, about? I have sleeping problems. Like the first 4 chapters are about sleep, and then the last chapter is like, now stick this in and out of your ass until you physically can't anymore.
But it's real somewhere. It's like, because dreams can be not real, but they can feel more real than, like, you can have a dream that activates stuff in you that feels more real than when you were at the DMV 2 weeks ago. Like, oh yeah, I guess I was at the DMV. What was the person that helped you? What do they look like? I don't remember. What was the carpet look like? I don't know. Was there a carpet? I don't even remember. Just so vague. But then the dream, you vividly remember details, and it activated stuff in your brain. And I mean, at the end of the day, like we're all just, we only have our own felt presence of immediate experience to reference it. Like, no matter how much science we look at, it is still all anecdotal evidence, because it's the anecdote of reading that work. And we've talked before about every possibility is there in the brain to experience. So when you feel like, oh, I experienced oneness of everything, no, it was just all your neurons activating at once and filling it up with that feeling. And I don't think they're different. I think it's the same thing. Being the whole thing and just feeling like you were the whole thing, it's just all the same. It's like the fake diamond or the real diamond.
I just can't get over this feeling of like humans are such great tool makers and such great explorers and everything else, that there's just this, I feel like there's just this inclination to just plant flags at places and like, we did it. We're everything. We figured it. Yeah. Well, physics came along for a while, found out we weren't the center of the universe, and then the sun doesn't revolve around. Okay, all right. Let's rework this. We still need to be everything that there is, right? There's just like this. There's because it's also, and then there's something too with it. It sort of behooves a human to overestimate how much it knows, how much of the environmental or intellectual terrain it actually has command over, how much predictability and control that it has over everything. And it just feels like a overestimation. It just feels like the same damn mistake humans have made over and over and over again.
It is.
Where it's just like, I just can't, like, I don't want to make that mistake again. You know, it just seems there's a trend.
It's 100% true, but only if you're seeing the human as the, you know, the value to be conserved rather than the felt presence of immediate experience. So when I say that maybe there's a consciousness outside of this one, it doesn't mean I wake up and I still have hands and I still think in terms of the language syntax that I have and linear time and basically all these rule sets that I learned, because who knows how much of this is just learned from when I'm a little baby with my physiology plus my environment plus my nurturing and just whatever else came packaged in. So I'm thinking,
what'd you eat today? How tired are you?
All
of that stuff drastically influences the perceptual universe, which I sort of relate as consciousness in my just everyday of, for the purpose of this conversation, I'm trying to like open up and consider possibilities, but in my everyday working definition of consciousness, I kind of think of the perceptual universe.
And I think all that falls away too. I think the spark remains, though. I think the spark of awareness is fundamental. Maybe not the most fundamental. Perhaps mystery is fundamental beneath that. Perhaps humor. I think humor might even be beneath everything. It could just be the biggest joke ever where it's like, this, none of this makes sense. How am I still alive? I know, right? It's stupid.
That is funny that comes along with, I mean, you know, these extreme psychedelic experiences, the cosmic laugh, but it usually is, there's usually a fair amount of sort of, I guess, psychological or existential suffering or something that usually sets it up. That's the setup for the big punchline. And the punchline's usually, and there's nothing we can do about it. And you're like, oh, okay. A dark joke for sure.
The darkest.
But
all the people you lost. Like all planned out. And I wish I could remember his rant, but Ungoogleable Michelangelo had a great little rant about how we're all punchlines looking for our setup, and we're all one line of genetic code, like going through this life, like kind of stumbling around thinking we have control, but we do have a setup that's going to be revealed. Or maybe he said it opposite, I don't know.
But I often, when I've had those experiences, when I reflect on them afterwards, which is, I mean, you know, I'll be, it's all grasping at straws, and you know, these perceptions, they feel so real, and then afterwards, it's kind of like, well, wait, how did that go again? Where was the key? Was the door?
Yeah.
The key was the door. But
it's like that thing that you take that makes sour stuff taste sweet and makes sweet stuff taste sour. You know what I'm talking about? I forget the name of the chemical, but There's like this chemical you can eat
No.
that it lasts for maybe 20 minutes or an hour, and you can eat a lime or a lemon and it tastes sweet. And then you can eat something like a strawberry and it tastes sour, and it inverts the flavor. And I can't help but think of the psychedelic experience where it's so clear and you think, oh, I was a spiritual being having a human experience, not a human having a spiritual experience. And then you come back down to earth and you're like, oh, it was my brain making up a story about the big stuff. So you never know which one is the true one you're standing in. And we can plant our feet firmly in whichever one we want, but we don't know which one's the real thing. And I think they're both relatively real. Relatively real.
Right. Relatively real. Yeah. But step off my fucking terrain, by the
Gladly.
way.
I'm going to float back up to 8D.
I'm the one that's supposed to get tongue twisted around here. There is this. So if I put my materialist hat on, the cosmic laugh, as you know, I'm quite fond of interpreting consciousness as like a grand exaggerator, and especially in those states. And if you think about it from just a kind of benign violation perspective of humor, which, as a reminder to listeners, things can be either too benign to be funny or too much of a violation to be funny. That sweet spot in between, ha ha ha. It's kind of a violation, but it's an okay one. There is that if consciousness is just creating. I do feel oftentimes during a psychedelic experience, whether it's happening every time, I don't know. Whether sometimes you're tapping into a real thing, I don't know. I know that absolutely sometimes, for sure, consciousness is creating a really grand, simulation or dreamlike state to interpret a much more nuanced feeling. And I'm not saying that in a dismissive way. I think in the beginning of I think the first October episode, the one on meditation, when I had this exaggerated feeling of anxiety and then an exaggerated feeling of relaxation and relief and everything. And that's not to say that it's not real, to say that it's exaggerated. It's just like pulled out and highlighted. It's just put under a microscope a bit more. Yeah. And I think some of the ways in which our brain creatively, we're storytelling creatures and creates these stories of these events. In my experience, you do ayahuasca or DMT or something like that, and there can be this like very intense amount of anxiety or discomfort that comes along with the nausea or the anxiety with the unknown or loss of control that one might expect. You can feel like you're dying and then zoom out and see your own death. It's just you're more tapped into the dreamlike state that's like, if I died, what would that be like? But you can do it so faster than you're normally used to perceiving, and the novelty of it makes it feel like more real. Like if you only had one dream in your entire life, you'd be way more convinced that dream would be real than if you had thousands of dreams. and within that, I do think that it seems like there's this tipping point of like you reach peak psychological suffering, like on the roller coaster, or it's kind of like when the roller coaster, all this anxiety, oh my God, the human condition. And then the roller coaster starts going down, and it is scary for the first little bit and like the first loop. And then you're just like, okay, like I'm on this ride and I'm safe. I'm not shooting out of the coaster. It's scary, but I'm safe now. And now I can laugh, even though it's still turbulent and I'm being flipped around and everything. And that's sort of the feeling of that cosmic laugh to me is a grand visual articulation of relief of like, okay, I'm not going to die from this experience.
Yeah, and it really comes down to marketing at the end. Like, let's see how I can
That's a great way of phrasing it.
It is such a marketing thing. It's because we really want it to be like, no, the cosmic eagle isn't just my storytelling apeness. It's fundamental to the whole thing, but it doesn't matter from your perspective whether it was a simulated thing or whether it's the whole thing. But I wanted to also bring up this idea here. So let's say,
sure.
So we're imagining like the universe is conscious, and then you're imagining like a galaxy spiral that's glowing, and it's like, I am, and it knows that it is. Let's say that's not true. But if Earth was wiped out by a solar flare, would the universe still make consciousness? Would it still be a consciousness making factory? I think so. I think it would still pop up other places. So in that sense, could you say that consciousness is fundamental and that it's always going to make it, whether it takes billions of years, trillions of years? It is a seed that still makes the conscious fruit that comes out of the tree, and you got to have the right conditions for it to emerge, but it's always going to be making that stuff because it's what it does.
Yeah, that's so. What about when the universe stops eventually expanding, and then starts contracting, and then implodes in on itself?
I think that's just like our lungs. I think it's just a longer time frame of our lungs expanding and contracting, and maybe the entity that is dies and has a kid or something. I think something to do with, I don't even have kids. You don't have kids. We don't care about kids. But something to do with,
I want to care about kids. Like, I consciously make an effort to care about kids. It's like, God, I
love my nephews and nieces and all that. I think they're the greatest. Yeah. But when I think about, do I want my own? It's like, no, I would, no.
I'm a step further where I whatever, a little tangent. I find lifespan development to just be endlessly fascinating. So anytime there's like a kid around, or one of my friends' kids or something, I'm like, cool, I'm gonna get to insight into, and I think of myself as like playful and childlike in ways, and then I'm like, I can't relate to this fucking kid. This is awkward. They don't want to talk to me. I'm just like in their way, asking them the same stupid questions old people used to ask. How's school? God damn it.
Oh, that's the worst. I hope I never ask anyone how school was.
So anyway, sorry to go on.
I don't know what
tangent.
I would ask now. I'd be like, tell me how to care about TikTok. That's what I want to learn.
Yeah.
Tell me how to care.
You're just supposed to ask them what they're up to, or ask if you can play or something. I don't know.
What are your pronouns today? What are they this minute? This is interesting, not to go on too much of a tangent, but just knowing lots of people with kids. Some of them are getting into, the like 10 to early teens. Like, there's lots of theys. So there's this whole generation growing up. Like, you and I did not know a single they, them growing up because the concept just didn't exist. Maybe they thought they were, but they were closeted. You just couldn't be a they, them. But now it's everywhere. So it's going to be interesting seeing a generation of kids growing up with that as that's just a normal thing around. I don't know in what ways it's going to change things, but I just thought it's not like two people that are identifying as a they, them. There's lots.
Well, it is kind of interesting philosophically that as someone who's spent not nearly enough time thinking about any of these things, so excuse me for whatever horrific stuff's about to come out of my mouth that I don't realize. But I had there's this place in Malibu I used to go to breakfast. It wasn't even that great of a place, but I'd often see the
place with the good view.
No,
The place with the bad view.
I can't even remember. I can't even remember it.
Surrounded by
It's just
dumpsters.
in some parking lot. It was just in some parking lot by this little movie theater. It was like decent food, and I'd go there frequently. But I'd see celebrities in there. I'd see like Pamela Anderson from time to time. I saw Bruce Jenner in there, and it's interesting to think like, oh, I saw a person that like, it's like a concept that like doesn't exist. Like Bruce Jenner doesn't exist anymore. Like he didn't die. He just doesn't exist anymore. You know, it just like became a different concept of a person.
Did you hear the Bill Burr bit where he's like, I'm fine with it, but I just, I grew up idolizing Bruce Jenner and I never got to say bye to him. It's like you just went to the bathroom and came back, and I'm supposed to keep going with my story and be like, so anyway, Caitlin, what I was saying was, it's kind of interesting. But I've said this many times before, but I think it goes back to the McKenna thing of all boundaries are dissolving. So the boundary between living and dead, the boundary between past and present and future, and the boundary between male and female, all boundaries are dissolving. So I think part of the moving into the future is just any sort of, even computers, like it's not even going to be binary. It's going to be the quantum computing has a third state, the qubit. It's got 0, 1 and superposition 0, 1. So superposition 0, 1 is like the they them of quantum computing.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be. I don't think I'm going to miss boundaries much. That was.
They were fun while they lasted.
So, I mean, whatever. I guess when I'm like, screw you, social constructs. It's not like I don't have my own ideas of social constructs, and I just don't care about the ones that aren't important to me or I'm more fluid with or whatever. But yeah, that's interesting in terms of a perception of consciousness too. And it's because it is tricky because it makes sense to organize things and put things in categories. And then it also makes sense to be fluid and flexible with that, and to combine categories into new things and that spark creativity and new universes of ideas and possibilities and perceptions. And so I guess I don't know where I am on boundaries, but whatever, like leave it to Beaver shit that was like my interpretation of reality when I was a kid, good fucking riddance. I hated that shit.
Yeah, it's not coming back unless you want to live it in VR or something.
Yeah.
A lot of, or maybe not that many of them, but some sci-fi books I've read take place in a world where people cling to old. You can live in any world you want, and some people cling to like the Leave It to Beaver theme of stuff. Some people love 1956 and they just live in there forever, but the real world is not like that. But they've like closed themselves off into living in 56 or 2008 or even 2024 or whatever.
I'm into that as like a character quirk. Yeah, you know, like I'm into that as like that's a funny ironic thing to do and dress up and to be really into. We were talking about 80s a couple of weeks ago, and that being such a distinct time period and everything. I say a couple of weeks, it was like yesterday in our time, but in the audience's time, I fluidly, you weren't confused. You knew exactly what I was doing. I don't know why I need to break the fourth wall.
Break it.
What do you think about
polar bears? I think we should do everything we can to save them.
Shoot them. Oh,
shoot them. No.
Save. So what about, so within my like more everyday functionalist model of it, I don't know if functionalist is the right word too, because it's like, I think that if you believe in a spaghetti flying
spaghetti monster FSM
in space or whatever, and that's what gets you out of bed in the morning. Like, I believe that that's great if that's a tool that you use for motivation that gets you through or helps you understand, like, you know, when something bad happens, you're like, you fucking spaghetti thing, always, you rascal of a spaghetti monster. But then there's like some of it's like, yeah, keep the fucking spaghetti monster out of my shit once it starts impeding into my life. I'm like, you know, there's not really a flying spaghetti monster, you know, once it's once you start questioning like germ theory or saying like the spaghetti monster has this and that to say about abortions, I'm like, whoa, come on now. But anyway,
separation of church and state.
My way of thinking about consciousness, it's not like I've came anywhere near solving much of anything with it, because there's still so many, like, are plants conscious? In my way of thinking about it, I don't think so. Even if they demonstrate something that we kind of anthropomorphize and it looks like they're reacting to a thing, and they are, and then chemicals are reacting and everything else, but I don't think that they're feeling. I think that you kind of need a limbic system or something. Like, I think that the like the sea urchin that has eyes and a nervous system and a small brain and swims around and perceives its environment and has this, what I would feel more comfortable as defining as a conscious perception of its environment, and then finds the place that it's going to plop for its life, and then it hunkers down there and anchors, and then it's just going to be a filter for the rest of its life. So now it doesn't need its brain and those eyeballs, so it digests them and turns into an urchin. I think that it was conscious and now it's not conscious anymore, even though it's living.
That could be so, and
that's a sticky, like, it's not that I think that I'm right. That's just like how it intuitively, I guess, feels to me.
It's a good case. No, that's an excellent case. I was just going to play devil's advocate and say perhaps they're not conscious the way we are, but there's some other thing that they have that we don't have. I don't even know what to describe it, not even awareness, but their experience of beingness, we might lack something that they have, the plants, that is, especially when you look at the giant network of tree roots, like all intertwined and sharing resources, and the way that, you know, they say like the largest organism on Earth is a fungus. They found out where it's like one fungus that like has a sharing root system, or they don't have roots, but yeah, they might have something we don't have, whether it's consciousness or not.
Yeah.
I think, like, going back to it's such a cheat code, but we don't know what we don't know thing. We don't know what we're missing. We don't know what we're not looking at, because we're so stuck in our own, like, well, I don't see any eyeballs or brain or limbic system, so it must just be a rock. But a rock that grows and goes for sunlight.
I mean, materialistic point of views have also, in the way that the spiritual perspective has been, taken us further and further away from the center of the universe. It's not like science has nailed everything all along the way either, and certainly from like a materialistic perspective, there's still been a lot of, sciencey explanations that put humans at the top, most supreme, things.
Dolphins
everything
close
else is
second,
lower,
octopus third.
So there's people that used to think that, well, dogs don't have consciousness or perception or anything. They're just like these cute robots. And like, if you kick it, that's just that Yelp is just this like robotic like warning thing so that you won't keep, but it doesn't actually feel that. It's just reacting to that. And there is like, and there again, this comes into the, did you call it decision space? So like the free will
your
argument
decision
of,
space, yeah.
Because I think of plants or fungus or that sea urchin after it plops as like, no, well, now it's just reacting. It doesn't have a decision space. It doesn't have a say in the matter. It might look like agency, but it doesn't actually have any. And then you can make the argument like, well, do we have agency? If we don't have free will? So then if we don't have free will, everything that's coming out of my mouth right now is just this like reaction to a thing that feels like I'm making a choice, but this was the only possible choice. This is the only way it was ever going to go down. Then I'm not conscious by like my definition of it. I feel like maybe not though. I don't know.
No, yeah, it's one of those weird things where if you introduce that argument against the dog, it can also be used against yourself. Kind of like in politics where they're like, if you give this party a lot of power, they're going to use it against you when they get into office. So you want to limit how much power you really give the government, even though at the time it feels like a good idea. But you saw Ex Machina, right?
I did.
Yeah, it made me think of that with the dog, where the robot is mimicking human emotion so much to the point where the other person falls for it, and it's even better at it than actual humans. So you wonder, like, is it a superior being, or is it just running its conquer everything program by mimicking and taking advantage of where your eye movement is and like doing this emotion and then sensing what brain chemistry you have at the moment and that.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about
polar bears again? I've changed my mind. Kill them all.
You're pro shooting them now. All of them?
No.
I feel like you keep a couple. You don't know. Like you might. I feel like you store a few away in case it's like we've made a horrible decision.
Yeah. Okay.
And
keep
we
2.
Actually do need some. I think you keep like 10 of them.
Wouldn't it be funny if, because people say like Dave Chappelle, his last 8 Netflix specials were all about LGBTQ and stuff. Like, what if his last one he just did all polar bears just out of nowhere? Like he just wins over both sides so hard. Like he just came out of nowhere with all this polar bear material. No one saw him workshop it. There was no leaked YouTube footage. He's the GOAT. He came up with a whole hour and a half on polar bears that was all killer.
He is dwelling on the subject. I guess he said at the end. Well, I watched his last one and whatever. I'm not.
It's been unpacked and repacked and everything already. There's nothing left to be said about it.
I'm not going to mention it unless we dedicate a whole episode to it. But
polar bears.
But anyway,
polar bears we will though.
But polar bears we will. Let me throw another one at you. I mean, again, I guess this is just going into is or how much of consciousness is just after the fact, is just this ad hoc explanation of a rationalization, a justification of things that you've already, there's all these ways of testing people, priming people to elicit a behavior. And then when they demonstrate the behavior, then afterwards you go, why'd you do that? And then they go, well, because
the purple bottle,
my grandfather always taught me this and that. And it's not at all why they did that. But there's behaviors, there's autonomic responses. There's ones like we can breathe without thinking about it, and we can also breathe while thinking about it, whereas you can't really control the blood going through your veins. You don't have as much conscious control around that. You can actually speculate. You can like imagine the tips of your limbs, like the warmth going from your chest to your limbs to cool your core down to help sleep at night with like neural feedback and stuff. So even that, I guess you can kind of sort of insert what I would call consciousness into an unconscious autonomic response. But say you get burned or something like that. Say
you tell me that my beats stink. I just got burned.
I have a burner on here as I have a kitchen in the studio, and I didn't realize the burner was on. If I touch that burner, the signal goes from my finger to my spine, and then it's making its way to my brain. But there's a thing in my spine that's going to send a signal back that goes, "Get your arm away." We'll like check in with the boss. Like before the signal even gets to your brain, you've already moved. And so you're not making a conscious decision. Your brain was never involved in that decision. It just and then afterwards I go, well, I moved my hand because it was hot, but you didn't sit there and go like, well,
my body moved it.
Let's exercise my decision space. Should I move my hand off the burner? Or should I not move my hand off of the burner? And so I don't know if that's
so. Let's say you're
conscious.
Let's take the body out of it. Let's say you're a brain in a jar now. It's kind of a grim fate, but
sweet.
Too bad you don't have the arm or the spine or anything. So you still
a grim fate?
Yeah, is that
like so few people get to be brains in jar? I'm gonna reframe it. I think this is a positive experience.
Okay, good.
But continue.
So you're the brain in the jar. You still have decision space in that you still have your inner thoughts, the little movie in your head. You can still direct where your thoughts are going. It's like, I should think about that some more. Or you can tell yourself, oh, actually, I got to remember, I got to change my vat fluid here. This is just vinegar right now, and I need to actually get some nutrients in the brain. Otherwise, this vinegar is going to melt away my brain or something. But when you're sitting there without worrying about your body touching the stove or something, you still have your internal monologue, decision space. But then that goes back to the free will again, because did you choose to change your thought in a different direction, or did it just go that way? But I think decision space is fundamental as long as we're saying there's free will. The choice maker. That's all you are, really. You're not your body. You're not your brain. You're not your anything. At the end of the day, you're the choice maker. What choice can you make with what you've been handed?
Well, so as we wrap up, because I think we did solve it. I think that. Oh no!
I won.
No, you son of a bitch! You son of a. But there is.
Can't wait to do this live. That's going to be so great when we're touring and doing live shows, and I'll get to like the lights will go out, and then just get to open the show with do 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 do, and I get to drink some raw eggs, and I just get sick and throw up all over the stage. That's what people will pay $10 for.
He threw up again. They ask for a refund when you don't get sick from the eggs. So
they would earn it, yeah, or deserve it.
One last thing, and then I think everything's solved.
Yeah, we figured it out. Throw out all your Deepak Chopra books. Throw out all your Dawkins. We got it nailed.
So, and by the way, thanks again to Stuart Brazewell.
May you braze even better than you are.
for the episode suggestion. But going back to the beginning and looping around to talk about this infinite kind of logical loop, going back to the one, how do you, I think you already mentioned this, but there's this turtles all the way down sort of circular logic situation with a thing existing that says I am, and then it was consciousness once Ra said
no
I am?
it doesn't say I am. I am is the second thing that happens. The first thing is it exists. The second thing is that it realizes it exists. So
that's a baby's first words?
Yeah. Very good. Yeah. So like existence it just is, because nothingness cannot exist. Like, how can you have nothingness? Like, what even is that? So existence just is. And then, or maybe it exists because nothingness already is sitting in that seat. Like, nothingness is taken already. So, oh, you already picked nothingness? Okay, I'll be existence. Existence is, and then it realizes, oh, I am. I exist. And I liked Arthur C. Clarke's
and before it realizes, it's not conscious. So it's existence first, and then it realizes, and it says I am, and then it's conscious.
Because it splits.
And before that, existence
into two.
Wasn't conscious.
Because you have to split yourself into two to look back at yourself. To say I am, that's already two things. You're like I, and then am. I exist. You're like, it's the feedback loop of looking at yourself, not even with a mirror. Oh,
that's interesting.
Yeah, so you've already split yourself into two by self-reflecting. Because by the time
that's got to be a confusing. I feel like it's more like I am?
Yeah.
Guess so.
Yeah, what else am I gonna do?
Just am. Oh, cool. Did you have anything else you wanted to? This is like.
I was going to just bring up the Arthur C.
Now.
Clarke quote. I might have even said this already at some point, but that's where we are in this podcast, where I'm starting to be like, I might have already said this before.
The infinite loop. We've arrived already. All right, episode 1, how we came up with the podcast, the origin story. What if this is the first episode of the next podcast?
Oh, we just infinitely recursively make new ones.
Yeah.
So Arthur C. Clarke said it's perhaps not mankind's fate to discover God, but rather to create God. So God might be this thing that is the sum of all consciousness, information, realization of stuff. And then at the end of time, it goes back and starts the Big Bang. It's one of those paradoxes. You have to be Marty McFly and set up your parents together in order for you to be born. It's just
AI. It's like it's what will eventually become.
Yeah.
It's
AI.
God is just Amazon Prime. Just a couple generations of all knowing, already knows what you want and need, and
that would be fun for a little bit. Just pure flow. Just like, yeah, lemonade. Okay, I'm sick of lemonade. That's it. That's all I came up with.
That's what evolution sort of is just like an endless shipping and receiving.
No traffic lights, no waiting, no trying to hit the yellow, just all green lights of getting what you want, going somewhere. Sounds fun.
Well, this is a fun conversation, and I'm glad that we solved it. And I think that's going to be probably a relief for a lot of people that have been contemplating this, wondering what consciousness is, and then we fixed it all. We solved it all for them.
And gave you a little extra
under 2 hours.
Yeah, and give you a little extra to chew on.
So if you want to support the show, there's of course Patreon, where there's tons of bonus content, and that goes to good use to our team, McCool and Rihanna. And there's also plenty of other things you can do, like give a nice review, thumbs up, comment on YouTube, subscribe, all those wonderful things that don't just do for us, but for any artist that you really enjoy and want to support. Just do all those things that you can. I know right around the time that this is coming out, Aesop Rock has a new album coming out. Very excited about it. Check that out. Spread the word about things that you like. Bring it up in conversations. That helps us out a lot. You guys are awesome. Thanks again for the episode suggestion. And until next time,
keep on salivating, honeys.
Do 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 do.